The following is a walkthrough of the Snort lab. Now, what I'm going to do is this is going to be a high-level overview of how you performed the operations that are required in this lab. The document that I'm using currently is version 1.2, but I'm also going to come out with a 1.3 shortly. Now, what we're going to see here is that this assignment starts off here. So we have all our information that we need. It describes what IDS is. And then as we go down, this is the information that's going to be pertinent to our lab exercise. The very first thing you need to do is you need to download the lab exercise, which will be located here generally, and I just already clicked on this to get this lab. Now, what we want to do next is we also want to download the files for the rules, which are right here. Okay, and we want to download the OVF that has the file for the secret file that we need to transfer, or you can just transfer that file using FTP. There's two ways that you can do it. Now, what happens is that as we're using this, we're also going to use a specific version of Snort, and that version is 2975, and it maps directly to these rules. Now, I'm not going to show you how to download this and install it. That's something that's pretty straightforward, and it's covered inside this document. But what I want to make sure you understand is that you need to download the rule set itself, you need to download the lab, you need to download the Snort conf file. And what happens is by default, when you install this Snort, you get the Linux rules, which is really strange because it's a Windows install. So there'd be a lot of work for you to convert that, and I've done the conversion for you. And all you need to do is make one simple change, and we're going to walk through what that change is. The other thing you need to download is the blacklist and the whitelist. Now, you need all of these in your directory, and if you look at my download directory, you'll see that all these files are there. Well, except for my conf file because I already moved it. So let me download that so you can see it. So again, here's Snort conf. We want to save it. And we're going to save it in downloads. Much better. All right. So now that we have all these files, what we're going to do first is, again, I've already extracted this. It's in here, and I've already installed it on my VMware system. Okay, so you'll need to do that, or just use the old server that you have and just push this text file over using FTP. And that's described in the document as well. Now, what we want to do first is we want to take these rules and we just want to crack them open. I use a tool called 7-zip. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to restore that, and notice that it creates a directory down here with a tar file. And then I'm going to extract that, and it creates a rule set in this directory of etc, pre-proc rules, and rules. Notice we don't need the SO rules, but we will need these. Okay, so these are going to get copied directly over. Now, what I've done is I've started a command prompt, and I put this all in my Snort directory. So you see here that there's bin, doc, etc, pre-prep rules, and then if you look over here, you can see there's a correlation between this etc and this directory, pre-proc rules, rules, and rules. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to move these directories into your Snort directory. And again, I've already done that, but generally all you need to do is find Snort and move these over to Snort like that. Now, the next thing that you're going to need to do is understand a little bit about this directory structure. If we look at the bin directory, what you'll see is this is where Snort resides. So this is how we run Snort. If you look at the etc directory, you'll see that this is where the conf file is. Now remember, the conf file that I gave you is the one you need to use. So you need to go back to downloads, find that Snort conf file, and move that over to the Snort etc directory. Just like this. Notice that it's in here. We move that to here, and then you have your config file set up. Now the other files that you need are, and again I'm going to go back here, well I guess I can do it here as well. If we go to Snort and we go to the rules, you'll see, and I'm just going to do last date, there are going to be a number of different files that we're going to look at. Now, important to know is that local rules is the rules that you're going to define. Now, what I've done is I've got solutions. Okay, so I'm cheating a little bit. And what I've done here is I have a solution for protocols, for HTTP, and for FTP. Now, this isn't going to be the complete solution set for you. And as a matter of fact, the solution set for you is in that document, which you're not going to see. All right, so I could test it to make sure that it works. But what I want to show you is that also inside of here is the blacklist and a whitelist. And you need to move the files into these two. See this blacklist, whitelist? Okay, so they need to go into the rules directory. And again, you downloaded those already. Here they are. And you need to move those into the rules directory. So once you've done that, the next thing we want to do is we want to look at how you're going to determine what interface to use. So I'm just going to pull this down, and really we talk about the install, and then we come to the point where we want to run Snort. Now to run Snort, the first thing you need to do is figure out what your interface is. Now even before you do that, the key to using Snort is you need to run it in administrator mode. To run it in administrator mode, you go to the command prompt, you go to more, you go to run as administrator. It'll ask you, do you really want to do this because this is a privileged operation? You say yes. Now I have a administrator command prompt. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Snort, bin, and inside here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to run Snort with the dash uppercase W switch. And what this does is it tells me what interfaces I have active. All right, and more importantly, what indexes are active. So what I want to do next is I want to go to here and I want to do an IP config. And when I do an IP config, it's going to give me a list of the interfaces that it found. And what I need to do now is I need to map my VMnet1 interface with the IP address for the index that I need to use. So if I come down here, what I need to do is I need to kind of move it over here and go, okay, so the IPv6 address, and that's what the address is being listed here, is FE80. And see these colons? That means skip the zeros. So, okay, so we're going to skip the zeros. They all have FE80. Skip these zeros. The next number is going to be ECF4. Oh, that's this guy. So this interface, which is interface VMnet1, maps to index 3. So that's what I need to know. Good to go. Now that I have that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start up my virtual instance, and notice I'm set for VMnet1. Okay, and I want to trap that. The other thing I want to mention is that before I do anything else, what I would like to do, so what I want to do now is I want to make sure that my rules are set up correctly and my config set up correctly. Now the only thing I really have to change in here, and I'm going to use Notepad, is snort.conf. And inside of here, on the very top, there is a section for HomeNet. And notice what I set it to. This is my HomeNet. Now where did I get that from? Well, I got it from here. Notice that my Wi-Fi is on my FiOS router and it's at this network. So all I'm doing is I'm saying this is my home net right here. And this is a /24. This is a CIDR mask for 255.255.255.0. That's the only thing I have to change there. Okay, and put that on your network, whatever it is, whatever it might be. And it can be either the VMnet one or the major Wi-Fi or router that you have. It doesn't matter. Okay, so now that we've done that, and we understand now that we're going to use VMnet 1, I'm going to power on the machine. And as I power on this machine, I also want to come down here and go to rules. And the first set of rules I want you to see is this rule set. And again, this is my solution. So let's just type this out. And notice what I'm doing here is I'm just alerting on any ICMP. I'm alerting on any UDP. I'm alerting on a TCP that uses HTTP. Port 80 is HTTP. And that's both for the client and for the server. And I'm also going to monitor 21. And 21 is FTP. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to start up my DSL server. And remember, it's OpenSense as the password. I'm going to wait till it comes up. And see, it came up and it has an IP address of 192.168.222.130. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to start my DSL panel. And I already know that I need to use FTP. And I'm going to need to use Monkey Web. So let's just enable those already. Okay, now they're enabled. So let's go back now. I have my services enabled. I know what my IP address is. I'm going to come through here. I'm going to look at the document. And in this document, we found out what the interface is. So that's good. So the next thing we're going to do is a -v, but I don't really need to do a -v. You need to do a -v because this is your first time. I know this is going to work. Okay? He says with confidence until it fails. So what we're going to do is it's going to come up. You're going to see a couple areas. You're going to see these in a minute. So you'll see them again in real life. And what I need to do is I need to scan for traffic. So again, I changed my IP address, got my config file all set up, I got my rules set up and moved the files over where they needed to be. So now I want to make sure that the rules match. And again, use my rules. Don't go to the website and pull the ones there because they're the latest ones and they're not going to work. I showed you how to extract the files already, how to move them, and there's where to move them and where to move them to. Notice that I'm using Snort. Okay, so here I moved it into the Snort directory. I just selected all three, moved them in. And then we have the files that we need. And then I showed you the example rules that we had. And this is just a description of how they work. And then finally, notice here, this is the command that we need to run to see if things are working. And I'm going to show you how to see if things are working by issuing this command. So notice I'm going to my administrator command prompt. I'm in the bin directory. So now what we want to do is we want to invoke Snort, give it the interface that we determined we should use, and that interface is 3, and specify the config file that we want to use. And again, this is the one that I provided for you that you modified by putting in your home IP address. And we want the display to go to the console. So let's see how that works. Let's first identify the interface, I3, and the config file is C:/Snort, and I'm using tab to autocomplete. And as you can see here, this allows me now to run on interface 3, which is my VMnet1, and my config file is snort.conf, and I want everything to go to the console. Now you notice that you'll get a bunch of warnings and things like that. That's normal. It's going to process the rule change. And again, what we're doing is we're going to run this rule set. And this rule set will allow me to test my services. Now, I've added things here from the default one just so that I can show you how to test right away, real quick, both services, so you not have to worry about me jumping back and forth on actually doing the test. So we wait a bit for this to occur, and then once we are satisfied that it's up and running, then what we can do is we can use FTP and go to 192.168.222.130, I believe is what the service was for my DSL server. And again, I can pull that up, but I think that's it. Well, sometimes this server will stop working. No problem. We can go, turn it on, off, and back on. And let's try again. So you quit out of FTP when it's not working correctly. Now I'm going to go to my service and see how it worked there. And I'm going to type DSL, and that's the username. The password is OpenSense. And then I can do an LS or a directory. Either one will show me what the files are. But notice over here what happens is it trapped my ICMP and my FTP request. So I proved that both those rules are working. And again, if we look at the rule set, and I just have to scroll up a little bit. All right, these are the rule sets that are in place. You can see here where I'm triggering on my TCP/NE here and here. And that's both for FTP. Now the other thing I can do is I can go to a browser, and what I want to do, I wanted to make it a little smaller so I can show the rules being triggered, and pull this down just a little bit. So I have my monkey web working, so I'm going to do a http://192.168.222.130, and you can see I went here. So you can see here now I have HTTP traffic inbound and outbound. All right, so this proves that my services are working, and it proves that I can connect through web as well as through FTP. All right, so that's the first thing that you want to do. You want to be able to do that, and you just quit out of here now, and that closes that down. Now the next thing we want to do is Control-C will exit you out. So now I have that completed. So I want to show you my next set of rules. And again, this is just going to be, actually let me show you again my solution set directory. There we go. So now I'm going to type out the rules directory, the local rules.ftp, And you see here that now I'm going to actually alert on a different rule, which is for the FTP secret rule. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy, and I guess I can do it this way. Copy. And I'm going to copy it to that to local rules here. So you see I'm replacing the current rule set that I have with this one. Now you'd be modifying the local rules file directly, okay, but I'm not doing that. Okay, now I have that rule defined, and again I'm going to type out the rule to make sure that yes indeed it did replace the right one. There it is. I'm going to come down here and I'm going to I have to start Snort first, sorry. So I'm going to start Snort again. And we'll wait for that to start up. Okay. So now we can go to FTP. Again, I'm going to log on using DSL. Open sense. I'm going to do a directory, and I'm doing a get of top secret .text. And you can see where the rule is hit. All right. So here again, if I type out that rule, and the one I want is FTP or just rules, you can see here where that happens. Now you're probably asking yourself, how do I know all this stuff, Bill? How can I figure this out? Well, the way that you figure it out is you take a trace of it. So I'm going to take a trace, and again this is just the FTP one because a lot of you probably aren't as familiar with FTP as you are with HTTP. Whoop. And I'm going to look at port 21, which is the FTP port. This is how I figure out what's going on. Each one of the FTP commands will say, I want a particular thing. In this case, what we see, this is a login. So what we have is the user is DSL. The password will be asked for it, and it's open sense. And we're trying to get a top secret document. So when it sees this, that's what it's triggering on. So this is how you can determine how the protocols work. Okay, so that hopefully will help you out in your way of trying to figure out how all this stuff is fitting together and working. All right, so the last thing that I want to show you, and again I'm going to get out of here, get back over here. This time I'm going to type out my one HTTP rule. Here it is. Okay, so how do we need to set this up? Well, what we need to do is we need to actually go back to the DSL server, and inside of here we're gonna have to move some files around, possibly. All right, you'll have to move files around. It's described inside the document. Actually, let me bring up the document so you can see about where we are. Okay, so now we know how to trap this. We walked over how to create these rules and how to determine that they're working. We looked at how to monitor HTTP traffic, FTP traffic, how to create specific rules. I only show you how to do one content rule, but they're all basically the same. So all you need to do is figure out what that is to do it. And then we're looking at the exfiltration portion. And we saw for the secret file how that worked. You need to do that now for the fx.env me-191 secret plans file. All right, the last thing I want to show you is how to get those files in place. So again, what happened was I provided the file for you, plus it's also in the updated OVF if you choose to use that one. You can use it any way you want. And what you need to do is this portion right here. Okay? And again, I'm not going to have a rule for that because I'm using another rule called top secret text as the example for what you need to do. All right. So back over here. What we're going to do is we're going to open up a terminal. And inside that terminal, we're going to type this command right here, the copy command. And again, this is if you're using the image that I am for the Snort Lab, it's already included. All right, so first let's list to make sure that we have it. The file is located in home DSL. So if we look in here, we can see we have that fx-me file. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy that home.dsl.f, and then tab is autocomplete. And we need to copy that over to opt/monkey/htdocs. And htdocs is where all of the Monkey Web documents are, so we can actually reference that directly. It's a virtual directory, so we can just go and grab any file that's in there. So you may ask yourself, what files are in there? Well, at ls-l and then the op monkey htdocs will give us the files. And notice the files that are in here are index.html, monkey, and then we have a couple of other ones, but the one we care about is the fx one. I don't want to give you a complete solution, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use CP again to copy the home DSL secret file, and it's top secret. And I'm going to copy that to, again, the opt monkey htdoc directory. Do another list to make sure that the file is there. And we can see we have our top secret file now. Now, how do we test this? Well, there's two ways. I'm going to use the easy way. And you can actually use this and provide the trace. It's going to trigger the same thing. Notice down here, I have you do all this setting up of wget through the honeypot that we used. This is one way of actually performing this operation. The other way is just directly using a browser. And I'm going to do that because it just makes it a lot simpler and easier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, and again, I have to make sure you know what the file name is. It's top-secret.txt here. I'm going to put /top-secret.txt. And now I'm just going to hit return. And here's my top secret file. Now what I'm going to do then is, as we saw before, I have this rule set, and I'm going to copy this now to the local rule set. So this is going to now only have one rule in it. Whoops. And when you're moving from DOS to Linux, getting the commands mixed up is a common problem. So you see now that this is going to trap on a list. In this case, it's customer.csv, and actually that's not really the file I wanted to do. So I'm going to modify this. So now you can see how things get modified. So I'm going to modify the local rules, and I'm going to come down here, and instead of this being customer.csv, I'm going to make this top secret.txt. And when I save it and I'm exiting out of here, I'm going to type this rule again. It has my top secret.txt. So now I'm going to go over here. I'm going to start up Snort. And we have to wait a little bit. I'm going to move this down here. I'm going to move my browser up here. I'm going to hit a replay, which is going to reload this file. And when I do that, we see that this confidential file gets triggered. Now again, the reason why it gets triggered is because this top secret text is being used to address that, and that's what's causing the trigger based off of the rule that we set here. This is the text that we see in the alert. This is the content that is being searched on. And that's it. Now there are more sequences. This will get you at least 80% away in the lab. Then as you go through the lab, it's going to get a little more difficult because I want to test those that have actually used this before. So you're going to learn something called NCAT. Now the reason why we're learning NCAT is because that's a special adversary tool that's used to pull information and do exfiltration based on a very small command line utility that's being used there. So I want you to get familiar with that as well. But again, this will get you 80% of the way. So I hope you find this useful.